Hello everybody, it's been a while since I've made videos and I thought I'd make one. And I thought I'd share like some of the books I got over the Christmas. And I hope you guys have had a good Christmas and Happy New Year so far. Anyways, what I got over Christmas in part was two books. One is John Lennox, Gunning for God, Why the New Atheists Are Missing the Target, which John Lennox says is arguably, well, John Lennox has said it is the most important book he ever wrote. I take that back. And it's a book that deals with many of the atheist objections to um, the Christian faith in general, talking about flaws in evolutionary thought, flaws in a lot of atheist tactics, which are basically non sequitur arguments, or they are attacking a straw man, therefore sidestepping, the real genuine issues at hand, as well as ideas that we have no free will, that everything is determined by our genes and the laws of physics, and so on and so forth. So that'd be a good book. Now, the next book I got is Determined to Believe, which goes along the same premises, which it's talking about the idea that we have no free will and that everything is determined. And it's arguments from not just a naturalistic standpoint, but also from a religious standpoint, because there are some denominations out there that want to hold on to this determinist worldview, and it's just not accurate. It just doesn't work. And John Lennox explains why in both things. Now, these are not the only books I've ever had from Professor John Lennox. One is called Against the Flow, which is really talking about the book of Daniel and how Daniel, who was a Jewish man, was in Babylon and had to deal with this culture that was both polytheistic as well as naturalistic, and standing up for his faith in Father Jehovah. And that this book really is talking about how we as Christians and Jews need to stand up for our faith in this day and age of postmodern relativism. And another book that I got, and I recommend this really to anybody who's new to the debate, really, and that they may be atheists or they may be agnostics. But this is God and Stephen Hawking. Whose design is it anyway? It is a very thin book. It is very easy to read, and it cuts to the quick on the late Stephen Hawking's arguments of a self-designing universe as well as multiverse theory. And John Lennox, I must add, Lennox doesn't just quote Jewish or Christian people in his books. He quotes other atheists and agnostics in his books who, for example, people like John Gray and Thomas Nagel, who are atheists, and people like Jürgen Habermas, who's also an atheist, and will say that the new atheism or the mainstream media atheism just doesn't mesh well, doesn't work, or quoting people like Paul Davies, who is one of the leading physicists in the world, but he's an agnostic atheist, and he says that the multiverse theory just doesn't work at all. Anyway, and another book of John Lennox's that I got, and this is really a book concerning the book of Genesis. You can find the lecture of this on Socrates in the City YouTube channel that John Lennox did, and it is called 7 Days That Divide the World. And it's talking about the days of creation. Were they literally 6 days of creation, 24 hours? Or were they long periods of time? Or was there long periods of time in between the creation order? And John Lennox gets to the heart of the matter and talks about that. I've used this book a few times when talking to my fellow brothers and sisters in Jesus Christ. And while I do not doubt whatsoever their commitment to Jesus Christ, I do question their view on what science is. And it's no good to make science fit the Bible or vice versa in a way. It's about looking at what the evidence is. And then you look at the Bible and you say, well, this is what the Bible really means. Because, there's been a lot of times over the history where man's knowledge was not as complete, and it never will be fully complete, let's be honest. But, we understand as time goes on what the scriptures really truly mean on certain things. And, I recommend that to anybody. John Lennox can say it a hell of a lot better than I can, but I'm just recommending it to you guys. Now, John Lennox's first book, God's Undertaker, Has Science Buried God, was one of the very first books he ever wrote. And I highly recommend this because it deals with several facets of atheism, just like gunning for God, but from a scientific point of view, more deeply. John Lennox is professor emeritus at Oxford in mathematics and bioethics. So it's not like you're hearing from somebody who doesn't have the intellectual capacity. This is a Christian who is, for all intents and purposes, a man of science. And yes, mathematics is a field of science, for after all, physics, and other, things are hinged upon math. Now, another book that I got, and I recommend anybody to get, and it's not by John Lennox. I know everybody's like, well, you're plugging John Lennox. But this is the New and Complete Works of Flavius Josephus. It is a very thick book, and it is Antiquities of the Jews as well as the Jewish Wars, and a couple of letters and commentaries that Josephus had. I don't think all of Josephus's works have ever been discovered. Some of them are lost, I think. But the point of having this is that the Bible is not a collection of fairy stories or myths and legends, but are in fact deeply rooted in history and historical places with historical people and historical events. And it's good to have books like this so that you could say, aha, well, the historians of antiquity said they did happen. And it's up to you as the modern investigator to, show that it has happened. Because so many people want to have this secular view of history. And as time goes on, we find that, archaeology confirms the Bible again and again and again. And I just thought, I'd recommend that book to everybody. And I want to recommend maybe for the beginner, if anyone is interested, whether you're a newborn Christian or a Jew, or if you're an atheist or an agnostic, I recommend maybe one of the first books you could ever read other than the Bible itself. Jesus' word, is above everything else. But I'd recommend Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis, which talks about what are the real rudimentary, basic, foundational principles of Christianity. Everything else, it's not immaterial, but it's one of them things where your salvation doesn't hinge upon it, if you know what I mean. This is a book I recommend to anybody, and these originally began as lectures on the BBC radio during World War II, and they were all compiled and eventually became the book Mere Christianity. Now, I do have another book by C.S. Lewis, and that is A Grief Observed. And this is one of the last books that C.S. Lewis ever wrote. And he wrote it after the death of his wife, Joy Grisham. And this has helped so many people in grief and losing a loved one, a friend, a family member, and I do highly recommend it to everybody. Anyways, I will talk to you all later. I will try to make more videos in the future, but I haven't really felt up to it, and that's really my own fault. I should be talking more about Jesus Christ in this way rather than just writing things. And as far as other videos concerning other subjects, I will maybe do more of those in the future, but I try to stay out of the drama. Anyways, Jesus bless you all. I'll talk to you later, and have a good day.